Good morning, everyone. Today is March 7th, 2020, and this is the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society Science Chat. So we've got a couple people here in the room. We've got Bob and we've got Carl here. So Carl, I'm going to mute you since we seem to be getting some noise out of your feed. So I thought we might chat about what's all in the news, which is the coronavirus. That's all the rage here around the Seattle area. You seem to be the epicenter of the entire breakout here. So I was wondering, Carl, how are things in your neighborhood with this whole coronavirus scare thing?
Well, California, as soon as this Princess cruise ship is allowed to dock, will have the largest number of infected people. Right now, it's your state. But there's been some local death. I'm in the Sacramento area, so northern central California. And in one of the neighboring suburbs, there was, I guess, the first death in California. But again, it was an older person, which seems to be the case also up in Washington. There doesn't seem to be as much scare about it as you might think. Like things are not cleared off the shelves, not everybody's wearing masks. I think a lot of people are considering it to be somewhat similar, I suppose, to common flu, which does kill a lot of people every year. We just don't get statistics about it. Whether the mortality rate is higher for this than the standard common flu, I think is yet to be determined, but it doesn't seem, as far as I can tell from people around, that it's demonstrably more dangerous or deadly than influenza or other flus.
Yeah, as scientists, we should pay attention about things like that and statistics, because they say there's lies, damn lies, and there's just statistics, right?
Yes.
And it is remarkable that like the ordinary flu takes something like 80,000 deaths in the United States or something crazy like that. And so that's like far outpacing, what the coronavirus is doing. So yeah, there's a lot. You think they would have been able to figure that one out by now? Just they say the mortality rate is like creeping up to the 3% rate, but no one knows what the actual divisor is and things like that.
Right.
Now, what I've heard is that the coronavirus can actually only attach to the lining of your lung and your lung cells. The virus is very much like a lock and key, and the only lock it can go to is in your lungs. So I have heard some things saying that one of the symptoms for coronavirus is that if you have a very strong hacking cough, but actually no nasal congestion, that's more of a sign of coronavirus rather than, say, the common cold or something like that. But it is interesting that they think that the virus is related to SARS, and SARS was also a respiratory disease. And seemingly what makes it so deadly is because it can basically suffocate you. So it goes and attacks the lining of the lungs and fills your lungs with water. And that's what you basically die of. You die of basically suffocation, and you're basically taking out your lungs. So I could kind of see how that would be a problem. I suppose if your body is strong enough to resist that, then you'd be okay. But if the virus manages to completely take over your lungs, then that's when you're in trouble. As opposed to, I guess, other viruses typically do just take over your nose, and things. But I think what might be interesting is that the virus actually has to get into your lungs. So I'm not sure whether we have to worry too much about, say, our eyes, but we do need to worry about our lungs.
Here's a question. So it's also called COVID-19, which I guess stands for Coronavirus ID number 19. So does this mean it's the 19th of the corona type? And what is a corona type virus?
Well, the 19 actually comes from the year that was found, 2019.
Okay.
It's called, they started calling it the novel coronavirus for, I don't know, whatever, or they wanted to call it the Wuhan virus, because that's where it basically came from. But yeah, the 19 is from the year, and coronavirus refers to the shape of the virus. You've probably seen pictures of it. It's like a ball that has little spikes on it, right? So like the points on a crown. So the corona means crown, and that's where they get the coronavirus from. Now this is the same kind of virus that caused SARS, and there was also another outbreak called MERS, and those are both coronaviruses. So they've seen this kind of thing before, I guess, in a documentary. When they first started seeing this disease in China, they actually thought that SARS had come back. But apparently, SARS killed like a total of 800 people. But we have far surpassed that with the coronavirus this year.
Interesting.
So we got Bob here. Bob, I was wondering, did you have how are things going in your neighborhood?
Okay. We don't have any instances yet in the neighborhood.
So where do you live?
Upper Rochester, New York.
It's definitely in New York.
Yep, but not in the neighborhood yet.
Well, it's definitely in my neighborhood. It's like the nursing home that's been mentioned in the news, the Life Care Center in Kirkland. That is the center that, say, my mom uses to get her rehab, and we typically go there once a year. So I've been inside that facility many, many times. So it's kind of scary that we have now basically all those people trapped into that facility, I think. And it just seems like it just keeps on spreading, and it's in the most vulnerable population possible. And my mom spent her last stint in there a couple months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. So glad now she's living with me, so she's not really in a large population of people. Now, Carl did mention a cruise ship. So the cruise ship, the Grand Princess, is hanging out in San Francisco, and they just tested 21 people positive for the coronavirus. So it's definitely on that ship. Now, we've seen this before with the Diamond Princess, and it's 800 of those people became infected. And that was probably a not good thing to happen. So what I understand is that the cruise ships tend to recirculate all the air in the ship, so that if there's one person giving out viruses, you're pretty much inoculating everyone else on the ship with it, because you're moving the air around to everybody, right? So a cruise ship is not a good place to quarantine people. So I'm just concerned that there's going to be another Diamond Princess there if they don't get those people off the ship. So that's really not a great situation, because there's really not that many places going to take 3,500 people to quarantine them. So if I were the guys on that ship, I would block my vents. If I had access to a door on a balcony, I would open that and just get some fresh air. don't breathe the air from the ship. But I kind of fear that that's pretty much what's going to happen to those people. They're just gonna circulate the virus around. Now, apparently, if you're in an airplane, you're a little bit better because the filters in an airplane are good enough to filter out viruses, but the filters on cruise ships are not. So, but around here in the Seattle area, which is kind of like the epicenter of the coronavirus, yeah, people are running and emptying the shelves here at Costco, and they've shut down, like entire school districts have shut down. The North Shore School District that I am in has completely shut down classes, and they're going to try and do everything online. The University of Washington itself has shut down in-person classes and is going to try and do things online. So that's a major shutdown. I myself have been asked to work from home, which I have been doing along with Amazon and Google and other major companies. So yeah, we're all running around here in a panic, right? And we're all trying to figure out exactly what we need to do to prevent from getting infected. So I see we have James here.
Hello, how are you doing? Hello,
how are you doing? And we have Dennis. So James, no coronavirus on your island?
Well, not that's been reported. I keep telling people things like watch out for signs like where a village somewhere on the island has been blocked off, or the schools have been closed and they haven't exactly said the reason why, except maybe to fix the plumbing or something. Signs like that, or health workers coming around asking if anyone is feeling sick in the household and things like that, rather than actually coming out. Now, Dominica, has some quite intelligent professionals involved in the Ministry of Health here. So, but there have been reported cases that I've heard in St. Martin, recorded in the media in the Dominican Republic, and of course you have the Caribbean cruises. Now, these ships that you were talking about when I logged on, I missed the first part of your comments, Franklin, but these ships, I think you have to be sort of almost retarded to go on one of these cruises, even before the virus, the COVID-19 virus was going around in the last month or so. These ships have been, petri dishes for all kinds of gastrointestinal bacteria and things like that. So there you go.
Oh yeah, I must be crazy because I go on cruises all the time. In fact, I just came back
right.
from Mexico.
I shouldn't have said that. That's true. You went on a vacation. Well, yeah, but you're back and you're healthy. So I guess maybe I'm overstating my case. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It seems like I caught a little bit of a cold coming the day after I came back from my cruise or something there. I think I may have caught something on the airplane. Now, my brother himself, he wore a mask on the airplane, and I think he was fine. And
but on your cruise, did you find any worry about being sort of cramped up with a whole lot of people in a relatively small space and everyone touching the same elevator buttons and handrails and things? That didn't worry you, Franklin, at all, or?
Oh no, that's half the fun, right? You're in the cruise ship with 3,500 of your newest friends, right? And you're all playing together, right? Hopefully. But the cruise industry has gotten more stringent since I've been going on. And if you go on Norwegian, they have a thing called happy washi washi, and every single time you enter the buffet area, they spray your hands down with I don't know, God knows what, but and now in Princess, they're still a little bit more lax. They have hand sanitizers available, and actually what they make you do is that as you enter the buffet area, they have a washing station. So you're supposed to wash your hands before entering the buffet area. But if you go on Norwegian, if you go on Norwegian, they actually have a guitarist, and they'll sing you the happy, happy, washy, washy song as you go by.
Okay. Well, now it just seems scary that you can be on among almost 4,000 passengers, not to mention 1,000 or more crew, and basically becoming imprisoned overnight. I mean, this is a whole nother dimension for the. It could be some of these cruise ship companies will refit their ships and turn them into prisons and go into a different business.
Well, I heard is what buy 1 week, get 2 weeks free. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But I've been hearing about on the news all the various recommendations, and so I want to talk about. So one of the recommendations they have is that you should wash your hands frequently for 20 minutes. This is like the most common recommendation that they're giving people.
For 20 seconds, I think, not 20 minutes.
20 seconds, or long enough to sing "Happy Birthday." Now, if you ever done it.
One thing that's not yet much in the news, even if you look at alternative news sites, is exactly who is responsible. If this is a bioweapon, who actually released it? I mean, this gets into a spy movie par excellence as to who. Apparently, the virus was engineered here in the West, so to speak, and somehow got to the China lab. And Dennis, are you okay? It looks like you got a little kind of a cut on your head there, sir.
Yeah, surgery for cancer.
Oh, okay. Well, God bless, and I hope you recover.
Yeah,
well, you're looking good now.
It was just squamous cell. It's not melanoma.
So I don't know whether any of you guys, we're all here investigators and thinkers, as it were, but it's sort of like gone out of the news media as to any kind of investigation as to who really is behind the release of what apparently is a bioweapon.
Well, from what I've heard, there's a Chinese lab within a stone's throw distance from the marketplace in Wunan where it originated. Yeah,
well, they've acknowledged that apparently, even the Chinese apparently have reportedly acknowledged that the virus went into that market, that fish market, animal market, rather than originating in the market. So that's sort of like one step from saying that it actually came from.
Well, I had to.
Lab.
From the story I hear is that a bat carried it, and there was a tick involved. Ticks are little insects which suck blood, and around here in Michigan, there's something called Lyme disease, which they spread. A friend of mine was bitten by a tick and got Lyme disease. The bacteria looks a lot like syphilis bacteria, except it's much smaller.
My daughter up in New Jersey had a bout with Lyme disease. She seems to think that, and I've seen on the net. Of course, you don't know what to believe on the net.
No.
But she says that she thinks that maybe this was again a manufactured bioweapon of an infection put into these ticks and from some lab in the Northeast, and apparently spreading to Michigan and elsewhere. So again, the age of some crazy people creating biological weapons appears to be here.
Well, the Lyme disease bacteria would be hard to it's only resembles in shape, not size, syphilis. But viruses are a different story. You can, if you know what you're doing and you have the tools, you can insert all sorts of viruses in the viral casing, which will then automatically inject it into your cells if it's contracted. The Lyme disease is a bacterial thing, but this coronavirus is a virus, which is different. It's much easier to work with. It's much less complicated. And the story I heard was that someone in the lab in China was bitten by a bat, which turned out to have a tick on it. So they quarantined themselves, but the bat was gone, I guess. I mean, they fly. You can't. So anyway, it looks like that Chinese lab didn't have enough security. And I'm wondering, since this is apparently well known in China, I'm wondering whether, the Chairman Xi might be in a lot of trouble. I mean, if there are way too many people in China who want revenge because their loved ones, they in China you can only have one child until just recently. They don't allow you to have more. They didn't allow you to have more than one child. So if your child dies, that's it. I mean, that's the ball game, so to speak.
And a lot of Chinese have left China for that reason. For example, my neighbor right here, I mean, my next door neighbor is a gentleman from China, and he's lived here in Dominica for decades now. And he has, that I know of anyway, at least 2 daughters. And they're now grown and off in college and things. But he's a brilliant man. I mean, he built pretty much single-handedly a 3-story concrete building, which is amazing. I mean, yeah. And I could watch him work. I mean, he's some kind of an engineer or something. At any rate, the origin of this is still murky, and I think at least the alternative media, and I think this chat here is part of that, actually, is going to at some point focus back on whether this was an intentionally released bioweapon. Now, as far as President Xi in China goes, my only thought there is that he may not be as smart as what people are, many say he's, a smart man, and even President Trump's talking about, he's a brilliant guy and this, that, and the other. I think you have to be fairly dumb to accept a position as president for life. Because if anything goes wrong, the only way to get rid of you is to execute you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a term limit, something goes wrong, okay, they vote me out and someone else gets the position. Wonderful. But to accept president for life in this day and age, I think is one thing to do. So I agree with you, Dad. You mentioned that he might have some real problems.
Well, that's the communist way, though, James.
Yeah, to have one leader for life.
Yeah, look at Stalin and look at Mao. He was basically he wasn't all there towards the end. His let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. We've got some comments here from about possible things to help. So you're saying that vitamin C is officially included in the Shanghai government's COVID-19 treatment plan. So Sarah's saying what? Take 3,000 milligrams daily as a prophylactic. So let's see, those vitamin C pills typically come in 500. The big ones come in 500 milligrams. So you'd have to take 6 of those. And if you're feeling sick, take 2,000 milligrams every 2 to 3 hours. So you'd have to buy the extra large size of vitamin C to do that.
Well, you can get powder too. You can get vitamin C in a powdered form.
Now, one interesting thing I heard, I just read an article about vitamin D and its relationship to flu viruses in general, because we know that the flu virus decreases tremendously during the summertime. So the question is, what is the cause of that? So some people are thinking that, during the summertime, you get more sunlight. And more sunlight means more vitamin D. So they're thinking that the reason why the flu goes away during summertime is because of the increase in vitamin D. So some people are advising you increase your vitamin D dose. So that's a new one. That's probably one I'll be trying. I'll be keeping up with my vitamin D doses, or at least make sure I'm not short of anything, I suppose.
Well, Life Extension Foundation, which is the #1 natural supplement company, has a gel cap which has black cumin seed oil, which they say will cure anything but death itself, and also advanced biocurcumin elite. Curcumin comes from turmeric. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but it's a spice. And the combination is supposed to be really good against all diseases, and because it boosts your immune system.
So you got another recommendation for you, Dennis, to use benzobazola or other benzozola derivatives, a very effective anti-cancer drug, which is cheap and not used because the patient dropped.
Yeah, but the virus is not a cancer virus. It's another type.
I think he was trying to help you specifically. So.
Oh, I see. Because of my forehead, yeah.
Yes.
Well, as it turned out, although I had Mohs surgery, MOHS, from Dr. Mohs, and they take off your skin one layer at a time until they find no cancer cells. I only had to have one layer taken off. Very thankful for that. Thanks be to God for that.
Yeah,
but,
that cancer can be.
Biocurcumin and black cumin seed oil combination from Life Extension is not all that expensive. And ever since I started taking it, I haven't had any colds or flu or anything. I haven't had a flu shot either. It's preserved in mercury.
You don't like the flu shot?
It's preserved in mercury. A guy I know got a flu shot and a pneumonia shot, both which were preserved in mercury. And he got some weird disease. He was in terrible pain for a year. You don't hear about this because the big pharmaceutical companies want to sell as much vaccine as they can.
Yeah, that's anything preserved with thermosol is a mercury-based preservative.
Oh, that stuff is deadly. That's why they use it. So it'll never turn out that they can be sued for having bacteria in their vaccine.
Well, they also use it in a lot of other things like contact lens solution.
Yeah.
So I use a lot of that myself, so I must be resistant. But it's like I don't know, like anything, if you're allergic to some specific thing, it can really do really bad things to you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But getting back to things which might help. So we've heard about vitamin C, vitamin D, and hand washing. Although I'm not exactly sure where this 20-second recommendation comes from. It's like the #1 thing that they tell you to do. But I don't know. Is there some study or something saying that 20 seconds isn't really effective, or they're just saying that out of routine because they've always said 20 seconds?
Well, they're trying to be on the safe side. They don't want people to just really quick wash their hands and tell themselves that that does it. It takes care of that. You need to make sure that the bacteria and the viruses are killed by the soap or whatever you're using.
Now, what I understand for the coronavirus itself, it's surrounded by lipid shell. And so the soap itself would dissolve that shell, which is why soap is effective against the COVID virus.
Oh.
So it just literally dissolves the outside of the shell, deactivating it.
Yeah,
but
you can't inject the interior into your cells.
Yeah, I did see an interesting animation on how the COVID virus works. So what it has, those spikes that are on the outside of the virus are actually a specific protein, and that protein locks into a receptor that's on your lung cell. And this is why the COVID virus is so specific to lung cells, because it has to find exactly the right molecular lock.
Oh.
And that once it's accepted, then the cell itself actually knows to pull in the entire package that's associated with that. So the cell is tricked into bringing the entire virus into the cell. And then from there, it goes and hijacks the cell's molecular machinery to create copies of itself.
Yeah.
I think it's rather remarkable that, the virus is really just a piece of RNA that is released into the cell. And once it does so, it just gets automatically replicated by the machinery that's in your cell. And when you think about this, and they have like animations of this, it's really incredible to think that these are actually little molecular machines. Because normally we think of chemicals as just kind of being static, but what really goes on here is literally like a little machine and cogs and things being duplicated and being driven by energy sources, and it's very much like a machine at that point.
Well, technically, I believe a virus would just be a strand of RNA, as was just mentioned. However, I'm very curious because they show these pictures of these spherical objects with the protrusions that Franklin mentioned, which are the binding, supposedly the binding sites with the cell membrane, and a particular protein actually in the cell membrane. Now, but that would be a cell, not a virus, or some kind of combination. In other words, they're showing pictures as if the coronavirus has a membrane, but technically,
well, actually, it does.
As far as I know, medically, the coronavirus is an RNA strand, as Franklin mentioned, without a membrane.
Well, no, actually, the viruses do have to have a outer package, so that's certainly, and they can come in all kinds of different kind of size packages, right? Some of them look like little spaceships that land on things, but this one is round and has the little spikes. That's why they call it the coronavirus. But it is definitely a package, but just inside the package is just the RNA.
Right.
So the virus, there's nothing else in the package other than the instructions, right?
Instructions, yeah. So what Franklin was saying a moment ago is, you might say the RNA strand is like a computer program.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the creation of proteins and which turn out to be structural objects in the body, like muscle and so forth, and enzymes as well. And these enzymes, once they're created, then can cause new reactions to occur.
Now, it was mentioned that viruses are relatively easy to manipulate. In fact, I think this is how they do a lot of the like genetically modified food, is that they'll create a virus, and this virus is specifically designed to go in and replace random sequences inside the target cell. So not only it's kind of scary that you can have a virus that not only can it replicate itself, but it can insert its own genes into your genome and affect it. So this is what they basically do to do this. They'll give the virus the desired gene sequence that they want, and then they'll infect the plant with it, hoping that it will get someplace that won't kill the plant. And then they'll just keep on growing everything that results until they get something that actually starts expressing that gene. But some people are worried about that because this whole shotgun approach, you don't know what other modifications are going to get done, because it's like basically a totally random process, whether it gets accepted or not, and whether it produces something that's viable or not.
Franken foods. They call them Franken, after Frankenstein, Franken food.
Yeah, Franken food. So you may have your Roundup resistant wheat, but who knows what else got screwed up in the process, right?
Yeah, that resistant wheat, part of the thing that the new GMO does is it creates an insecticide, which you also eat when you eat the wheat.
Now, I don't think it creates the insecticide. Well, not unless it creates BT, but I think it's just resistant to the herbicide. See, that's the Roundup.
Yeah, it's resistant to the herbicides, but it also contains an insecticide because they're worried about they don't want the insects eating the wheat. So
yeah, they don't want extra weeds growing up around it, and they don't want bugs eating them. So I wasn't aware that they are also genetically modified to prevent the bugs from eating them, because they produce a natural insecticide.
An insecticide as well as resistance to Roundup and things like that.
Yeah, and there is some, there's this whole gluten thing that's been going on for the past couple of years, that a lot of people can't seem to eat wheat. And part of it, they say, might be due to the fact that we have all this genetically modified wheat around, because some of these gluten people can have gluten, but it has to be like from Europe somewhere, right? Where they grow it in some different place. Here in the United States, it's like all the wheat is like one monoculture. It's just like it all comes from Monsanto, and it's all the same thing. And that's what we all eat, right? As a gigantic monoculture. But the virus can be modified. Now we did discuss a little about whether this was a bioweapon, and if it was, I don't think it was intentionally released. Obviously, I don't think the Chinese government wants to kill 1,000 of their own people. It's probably more likely an accidental release.
Well, I think it was a bat that had a tick.
Well, that has to do with the biological origin. So if you don't believe the conspiracy theories that this was actually engineered, then what the mainstream says is that you have a bat who has the coronavirus, which get this tiny modification. And I just saw a documentary yesterday saying that the virus could be modified as little as by one base pair. And by doing that, it can branch off to be a new virus. In fact, they're saying there's actually two major variants of the SARS virus, and they only differ by a single base pair. But that may make the difference between it being more virulent and more deadly versus less deadly. So there's these two types differing by only a single base pair.
I think there are some publications in some mainstream journals, like I think Lancet is a medical journal, a peer-reviewed medical journal, where people who have sequenced this have found that a section of the HIV virus, the AIDS virus, had been inserted into this influenza-type coronavirus. Why would you do that? This insertion of an HIV segment of the RNA of the HIV virus would allow it to attach more readily to cells and enter those cells. Also, there is some, the Chinese labs themselves have now claimed, doing autopsies and things, that this new virus, the coronavirus that we're talking about, attacks not only the lungs, but also the brain. And this may explain a little bit why you see people having seizures as they're dying. A third point that I might mention, and this again could be put in the conspiracy theory, but what I just got through saying is not from conspiracy theory sources. This is from mainstream medical journals, okay? The insertion. And the people say that, the experts in this area say that to have a whole sequence from the HIV virus inserted into this corona new virus, it just wouldn't happen in nature. It's not changing a few base pairs. It's a whole sequence which creates its own proteins and so forth. So this is definitely or appears, if you go along with the mainstream literature, to be a manufactured product, probably a bioweapon. And then the third more scary thing, which may be more still in the conspiracy theory area, but again, there's good data supporting it, is that it tends to attack people of Oriental genetic backgrounds more than others. Why? Because they have an ACE2 type receptor in their lung cells, okay? And that's where this virus preferentially attaches. So again, this is a very mysterious information, and this is not from right-wing conspiracy theory people. This is in mainstream journal literature.
Yeah, I heard that that the virus is particularly well suited to people from Wuhan. So it's almost like they developed it in Wuhan for the Wuhan people. And unfortunately, my father came from the Hubei province, which is where Wuhan is. So if that's true, then I might be in trouble. But okay, I just might have that receptor. But I hadn't heard the specific story about why that might be. So I better start wearing my mask, right? Okay, let's see here. Okay, there we go. Although there is quite the controversy over the recommendations. Now, one thing that the media keep on saying, that there's no need to buy masks. They don't do anything. They don't work. It's like, stop doing that. Although when you go watch like what they're doing in China, it's like everybody's wearing one of these masks, right? So that whole recommendation is kind of falling hollow, because it's like, well, if they're so ineffective, then why is everyone using it, or why is anybody doing that? I mean, I would think from a common sense perspective that a mask like this is not good enough to filter out the coronavirus, apparently. So if the coronavirus comes in here, I can still breathe it in, right?
Well, it's in drops, so it's in liquid drops from when you
But
cough.
yeah, I would think that if it's in liquid drops, then that this would be enough to filter a liquid drop out.
But it can also get in through your eye.
That's also true. Although I had some questions about if it can get through your eye, but if it actually has to get to your lungs, then maybe it's not such a big deal. Although a lot of people, their standard protection is to wear goggles and an N95 mask, right? So we've got these kind of masks, but this is an N95 mask. Now, what this means that the N means is that it only handles particulates, and the 95 means that it's 95% effective in filtering those particulates. So if you ever wondered. So these are very hard to find now here in the United States. They've all been bought out from the hardware stores. And but my question about this is like, this really doesn't fit your face very securely anyways. So it would seem that you could easily breathe in something. It could get in through the sides of your nose here and stuff like that. Would seemingly be not that much more effective than your dollar store disposable filter masks, really. And I think my brother just got these for $1 at the dollar store, 8 for $1, right? They haven't started overpricing things in the dollar store, at least, right? Okay, things are still $1 at the dollar store. But I would think that some masks would be better than nothing. So I don't know why the media would be telling us not to do that.
Well, they want the mask for people who work in hospitals and so on. There's not enough to go around.
Well, then that means that we should definitely have our masks then, right? Because they think it's effective, right? Rather than, because is the media telling us not to wear masks so that we all die and that we save them for the doctors? And is that the problem?
Well, there's not enough masks to go around, and the people in the hospitals are required to have them.
Yeah, but we're talking conspiracy things here.
Well,
so, but
no, it's a fact that it's a fact that there aren't enough masks to go around.
So therefore, we should hoard as many as we can, right?
No, I don't wear a mask. I don't think so. But the thing is, a lot of people want these masks because they don't know what to do. But if they buy them all up, then the hospital personnel won't be able to have them, and they may not. The nurses may say, "The heck with it. Give me a mask, or I'm not going out on the floor."
Well, definitely they will. Though I think that pretty much that when people do that, it's like they quickly empty out the stores. So that you can't buy a mask simply because, well, you can't buy a mask. But the hospitals have governmental sources. So Trump just signed an $8.3 billion spending bill. I don't know what they're going to spend $8.3 billion on, but I'm sure it'll help. Although it's kind of funny that, they shut the entire government down for like a month or two when Trump was trying to get the $8 billion to build his wall. So, they're willing to shut the whole government down over $8 billion. But when it comes to coronavirus, it's like just like that, right? Oh, yeah, we can spend $8 billion. I don't even know what it's for. What are you going to do with the $8 billion? But I haven't even seen a spending plan for the $8 billion, right? So
part of it was to get a whole bunch of test kits out there. And I find it very weird that the U.S. is way behind other countries in having the ability to test for the virus. And so in many cases, we really don't know how much of the population is carrying that virus now, because there's been virtually no testing. And in the U.S., plane loads of people still keep coming in from all over the world.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Here in Washington State, it's like there's only one place you could get tested, and they can handle like 200 tests a day, and that's like nothing, right? So you have to very carefully ration who gets tests. So the only people who are going to get tested are the people who are coughing their head off and who just came from Wuhan, China, and live with an existing COVID-19 patient, right? But the problem is that I think one of the factors is that people can walk around and be relatively well. I mean, you could not even know you have the COVID-19 virus and be sitting there giving it away to everybody, giving it away to hundreds of people, and not know, right? Because I think they said that SARS was actually, had a much higher mortality rate, like 10%, but you were only infectious during the times when you were obviously sick. And
now, if I may just throw something in, this may be a little bit of a change of topic, which I don't want to actually do, but let me just throw this in. Franklin piqued my curiosity when he was talking about the genetic lack of genetic variability in U.S. crops like wheat and perhaps corn as well. Now, lack of genetic variability is a huge risk, because if some bacteria or other pest or whatever adapts to attack those Monsanto produced crops with lacking genetic variability, we might have mass starvation on our hands because of that lack of genetic variability. Because genetic variability might save a population if it were there, because those that the disease will attack or the enemy, whichever it is, an insect eating the plant or a bacteria attacking the plant as some sort of a plant disease or whatever it might be. With the genetic variability, the one susceptible to it might die, but the rest of the population is sort of immune to it because of, they're genetically different. So I just wanted to throw in that I think that one of the, you heard it here first on CNPS chats, that it could be what Franklin mentioned is the big story. The big story, the lack of genetic variability in U.S. and perhaps some other countries as well in their crops. This is an incredible liability.
Okay, now you really got it through. We go from a virus that'll affect a few hundred people to mass starvation. Okay. But all due to science, right? Science makes things wonderful. So
that's right, Franklin. People have got to stop worshiping science. If there's going to be, things aren't going to go to hell in a handbasket.
No, we worship science. That's why we have so many billions of people on the land in the world. The whole green revolution, that was all science, right?
Well, but science can do some good things, but it can also do some bad things. Ethics has to become more important than science, for science's sake too, but just for the general welfare.
But I think part of science is that we don't know what we're going to eventually do. It's like if we create atomic weapons, it's like we do that because we think it might be possible. We don't know whether it really is possible, but we'll just keep on going until we actually build one. And then we might end up exterminating ourselves eventually, because of it, right? So you try and do good, and you're doing things for a particular reason. But once you open up Pandora's box, then, you've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, I don't think bioweapons should be, created. Although you would have to work with them if you find out that some other country that is not, whose leader is not a nice guy, then you'd want to know what he had cooking in some lab in Wunan. So it's a fine line. You don't want to create bioweapons because that's wrong, but you do want to study them because someone else could use them on you.
Well, what I heard that's kind of interesting is that some of these labs, they want to recreate, things like the Black Plague or whatnot, so that and they'll do it by specifically genetically engineering something. So that just like they want to deliberately create like the worst virus possible.
Yeah.
So because they want to, not because it's a bioweapon, because they want to have samples to test with. So because they're saying that eventually nature is going to do this. Eventually nature is going to invent this super bubonic Black Plague, and the only way that we can fight it is to create a copy of it ourselves, so that we can study it and find a way to fight it, right? Which seems a little bit ridiculous to me, because if that thing gets out, then you're going to have the worst bubonic plague ever, right?
Yeah.
Man-made, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, that's kind of in the conspiracy theories thing. Maybe that's what was going on in this Wuhan laboratory. They're just playing around with the coronavirus. And why are they playing around with the coronavirus? Well, maybe because they had SARS. So they're going, okay, well, they're maybe worried about SARS happening again. So let's go create a SARS-like virus, right? And this virus is, very close to SARS. And then all it has to do is, someone has to walk out the door with it. And then, a impending catastrophe ensues.
But what happens is this, Franklin. People are have specialized in biology too. And they want money from the government to fund their research. Well, how are they going to get that money? Well, they can convince someone that, like you say, that someone might create a super Black Plague and then release it as a bioweapon. And so they say, so we've got to work on it too. And it just so happens that our lab is the lab that should get the money to do that.
Well, money is the source of all science, right? So
I don't think so. You ever hear of Romer, old Romer? He was
no.
the one who watched the eclipses of Jupiter's moons, and his work led to the Newton's key concept of absolute space and time. And he made zero money. He'd climb up on the top of his house, strap his telescope to his chimney, and observe the moons of Jupiter, if the weather permitted, at night. And so his work led to Newton's work. He made zero money off that.
Zero money? How is that profitable?
It's not. I mean, he just did it because it interested him. It was, he wondered about moons of Jupiter eclipsing and so on.
Well, gee, that's what we do here. Because if any of us had an actual job in science, they would fire us.
Yeah.
So let's see here. So getting back to the whole mask controversy. So definitely Musser says that it's useful on people who are coughing. So that's definitely anyone who is coughing should wear a mask so that their respiratory droplets are at least immediately contained. Or the other recommendation is to cough or sneeze into your sleeve, right? Of course, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your hand and you're going to put it on your sleeve, right? So And then you're gonna touch everybody, right? Okay, here we go. You got it. All right. Giving it to everybody, right? So I'm not so sure how that recommendation is too great. But let's see here. What other recommendations they have? Okay, so we're talking about the masks. So I was gonna say that if you're really concerned about keeping yourself from getting the virus, you would probably have to wear a more effective mask. They have for construction workers, they have like a half mask respirator. So it's a big rubber thing that goes over your nose, and it's got like these big filters on the side. I think on the news they had some picture of some guy walking through the grocery store with the full hazmat suit, one of these masks and goggles, right? So that would be the full hazmat suit.
One of the recommendations that people come up with on their own is simply self-quarantine, or perhaps that's not the right term, since these are people who are not sick. So we could just call it stay at home rather than self-quarantine, or we could call it avoid activities which involve large groups of people, music concerts, going to restaurants, crowded restaurants, even going to church. Like in Italy, they were in the affected area around Milan. They were telling people not even to go to church or to take communion, things like that. So people on their own, perhaps the number one thing you can do in addition to washing one's hands would be stay at home. And that's why people think that some of these stocks that involve home entertainment, like games and Netflix movies and things like that, they're going to benefit from people staying at home, because they're going to want to have entertainment in their home while they're staying at home, to replace whatever entertainment value they were getting from going out into groups of people outside their homes. So, for example, those who stay at home are less likely to get infected.
Well, that's a lot of what's going around here at the hot zone here in Seattle, Washington. It's like my church has canceled their in-person service, but they are going to be live streaming. So they've always had this live streaming option, but now they're telling the entire church to just go online this Sunday and watch them there. But they're still going to assemble like the whole video team and the worship team and the pastor, and it'll be like they're going to have a regular worship, and they'll have a few scattered chairs out there for people who didn't get the message. But they're going to do everything on live. So if you want to go to church, you can go to New Hope International Church on YouTube, and we'll be having our own service online, just like we have our Saturday morning science chat. My company, SAP Concur, they had a very large trade conference called Fusion that was going to be in Florida, and it's like one of our biggest deals all year long, and they completely canceled that. And instead, they are having they're replacing it partially through webinars. So there's going to have like a keynote. People will be able to watch those things, some of the things online. But it was just a huge deal that, hundreds of people were going to travel from here to Florida for that conference. So probably someone thought maybe it's not the brightest idea to send hundreds of people from the hot zone to like another state, Florida. Although Florida already has their own cases now anyway, so it's not like we had to help them. But yeah, if you want to get an idea of what it's going to be like in your neighborhood, it's going to be like what it is here in Seattle. Schools are closed. People are told to work from home. Churches are closed. People are emptying the stores of like the weirdest stuff. Like bottled water is gone. It's like the virus doesn't spread by water, and there's not going to be anything wrong with the water supply. So why is everyone doing bottled water? And toilet paper is disappearing off the shelf. I'm not quite sure why people think that they need that much toilet paper, but if the virus comes to your neighborhood, things to pick up for sure is bottled water and toilet paper, just so you can continue the insane hoarding of things that you don't need to hoard. Although myself, it's going to be my shopping day, and I will personally get at least twice as much as I think I need. I'm going to get some that. They also recommend to have on hand some cold medications. So I'll probably get something, but probably not from the dollar store, or maybe I'll get some from the dollar store. But they're saying that medications from the dollar stores are kind of hokey. But get some real medication, get some vitamin D, get a gigantic bottle of vitamin C. What other things here? Now, someone's talking about microwave ovens here. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure what Illuminati is talking about here, about microwaves here. Maybe he's talking about killing germs, right? "5G is helping to spread the virus by damaging the skin." Well, that was the other comment, is that washing hands, that kind of dries the hand. It's not really a great thing for your hand. And yeah, so we're stockpiling for being quarantined at home. Exactly, right? So right now it's still not too scary going out, but by next week, who knows? I mean, it's kind of remarkable how fast these things spread. So on YouTube, I watched this documentary about the lockdown in Wuhan, like 31 days in Wuhan. And it's like day by day, things were like, okay to like totally locked down, and all the streets are just completely deserted. And people are like hiding in their houses, and at any moment they could knock on your door and then drag you out if you had any kind of fever and things like that. So let's see here. Oh, he's talking about 5G wireless signals helping to spread the virus by damaging the skin. I haven't heard that one. So I don't even know 5G is around in this.
5G has a lot more radiation coming out of it than 4G.
Oh, is that the deal?
EM radiation, which does damage the skin. That's not all it damages, though.
Let's see here. We have Alistair is with us here. So Alistair, I see you've got some comments here. What do you think? Go ahead, Alistair. I think we heard you.
What I'm seeing is a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of worrying about something that is never going to affect their lives.
I tell you, it's already affecting my life.
It's affecting.
I'm not going to work. I'm not going to church. I'm about to go
for the virus. It's the reaction that's affecting people currently. The virus hasn't affected you. The reaction of people might have affected you, but that's all. Nobody has the virus currently, do they?
Well, I know of the life care center. Like I said, that is the center that my mom uses. So I live with high risk population here. My 86-year-old mom. So, and well, we are picking up here in Washington State significant number of cases. And we've got like 12 dead. Most of them from that one life care center. So that's tragic.
12 dead in Washington?
In Washington alone.
Wow. Congratulations. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, yay. We're the hot zone.
Is that the worst in America, is in Washington?
Yeah, that's the worst. Except when that Grand Princess cruise docks. And then they'll be number one. Right. Okay.
Are we talking Washington, D.C. or state?
State, Washington State.
Oh, I guess.
But I think all of those 12 dead were in one nursing home.
Yeah, that's right. In the Life Care
That's
Center.
right, because somebody came to that nursing home who had it, and then everybody else got it from them. They lived there, and they had been in China and came back, or something like that. I remember hearing.
Yeah, what's unfortunate is they keep on having this constant stream of ambulances out of that, taking away new cases. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like they're still having new cases. They seemingly can't stop it.
All right, then I'll concede that maybe Franklin, you should go and buy as much toilet paper as you can, but everybody else, don't worry. It's way overblown, and there's tons of disinformation also. But the information you guys have been saying has been pretty good so far. But the concern level is way overblown. Currently, it's 1 in 75,000 people that has gotten it, and they're almost all in one place. So the number of people around each one of us that don't have it in probabilities is in the hundreds of thousands. The chance of you coming across a person that has it is almost zero, and then the chance of you contracting it from them is another almost zero.
I think the idea is to try and keep it that way, because so I watched this documentary on Wuhan. So Wuhan is like, I don't know, it's like 11 million people. It's like New York City or something.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most densely populated areas in the country. And what happened is that they identified the virus sometime in December, and it took them 2 or 3 weeks to recognize that this was a new virus, and they had like 51 patients starting in the hospital. But by the time they had gathered those 51 patients had infected hundreds each. And then after that, that went from hundreds to 50,000.
And I'm certainly not saying that nobody's going to get it. I mean, there was a confirmed case in Mississauga, and the person is known to have been on the public transit system on 3 different days before they were found out that they had the coronavirus. So other people could have gotten it. So yeah, it's going to get around, but it's not like magic. It doesn't just like jump from person to person. There needs to be contact. It's like I don't know. I just see people like they have these visions in their head that just don't match reality. Do you remember SARS?
Yeah, I was mentioning SARS.
Why
so
didn't
the coronavirus was manufactured from SARS, or no?
Why didn't SARS keep going and kill everybody?
Because, like I said, it was easily restrained, because when you're infectious is when you're obviously infectious. So they could obviously identify these people and keep them away. What seems to be the problem with coronavirus is that it could be just like any of us. I could be spreading coronavirus right now. I wouldn't know it because I'm not sick. I'm not coughing a lot. Maybe I'm coughing a little bit. Maybe I caught something on the plane when I came back from my cruise from Mexico. Who knows?
But we never cured SARS. There's not a cure for SARS. You can treat, you can help the symptoms, but there's not a cure for SARS. What stopped it? How did it stop spreading?
Communism, because these guys, when they see something that coming down the pike, they just clamp down on it, right?
Because diligent hygiene is enough to stop a disease that spreads by contact.
Well, theoretically.
And so SARS stopped.
It would be interesting to see why SARS stopped. I mean, why did that not just become the new seasonal flu? Why did SARS actually, I think, get eradicated? It would be an interesting question.
Well, it's not eradicated. It still exists in animals, right? Or I'm not sure if it's one of the ones that comes from animals, but like with H1N1 is from an animal. So even when no human has it, it's not gone, just no human has it.
Yeah, what happened to the other flu? So the H1N1, that's like bird flu. Or what happened to swine flu? What happened to these other flus? Have they just become part of the seasonal flu thing? Because a lot of people die from the flu, like way more than have died from coronavirus. You know, like
Yes.
tens of thousands of people die every year, every
100.
month.
600,000 a year, I think, from normal flu. But you always have to remember too, when you're hearing those statistics, that they're talking about people who had other stuff that made them more susceptible to it. And so it's the combination. So it's people that were like, one leg was already over the cliff, and then they got this disease that just pushed them the rest of the way over the cliff. So it's not
Well, that might be true, but
Alistair, I'd like to ask Alistair, if I may jump in, or anyone else for that matter. What about those reported cases where people apparently tested positive for the coronavirus, were treated and supposedly got well, and then were infected again? My question is, wouldn't in their first round with the virus have developed an immunity, antigens for this virus? Or what? I mean, what explains that?
I don't know enough about the specifics of coronavirus to know whether or not you develop immunity to it, or whether you just kind of beat it down. Like
Okay.
there are inside of everybody, there are good germs and bad germs, and typically the good germs keep the bad germs beaten down. But then sometimes you have a situation where your good germs aren't enough of them, and then the bad germs win, or something gives the bad germs a little boost, and then the bad germs are winning, and so you got to have more good germs to beat down the bad germs. So
Okay.
it's not that you're immune to those bad germs, it's just that you manage to control them, you manage to beat them down. And so I'm not sure if coronavirus is something that you develop an immunity to, or if you just manage to kind of like beat it down so that it's not winning. I don't know which one it is.
yeah, it's one of those. It's too early to tell things. Now they are saying that that if you recovered from the coronavirus, that you might get it again, which would indicate you don't get a permanent immunity. But then there are these other things where people who have recovered from the SARS virus in China, they're donating their plasma, and then they're putting that plasma directly into current coronavirus patients, just to see whether that helps. And they were saying, oh, it looks good. You know, it's like they're doing better. They haven't slid down the hill anymore. So that's another, possible treatment, that if you build up an immunity, that you may be able to, pass that immunity to somebody else just by what's in your blood plasma. But once again, probably too early to tell, but people are trying things like that. And I heard that they've already developed like a vaccine, and that they're looking for people to test.
Yeah, if there's a vaccine, and I'm seeing that too. I'm just browsing through stories, and if there is a possibility of a vaccine, it means you can build an immunity, because that's how they develop vaccines. Is they take the immunity from a patient that has had it and beat it, and then they get that to multiply, and it makes the vaccine. It has to come from a healthy person for the vaccine. Like, that's how they get the seed for their vaccine.
Yep. So, but Alistair, you're not scared of no virus, right?
I ain't scared of coronavirus.
Well, what I think is kind of scary is that
where it says that though is not me writing it. That's a doctor. That's why I put those quotes there.
Oh yeah, you had some long quotes here about Abdu Sharkway, who's a doctor, and he's worked with every single kind of sick person there is: TB, SARS, measles, shingles, whooping cough, diphtheria, blah blah blah. And very little has left me feeling vulnerable, overwhelmed, or downright scared. Well, that's one brave doctor. Now, there was a lot of publicity about the doctor who initially blew the whistle on the coronavirus, and he died. Right now, there's a young person with no other complicating factors, and he died. So we are seeing some perfectly normal people. You'd think that if they were going to save anybody, that they would have saved that doctor. Of course, there are some conspiracy theories saying that the Chinese government actually rubbed him out for for snitching on them, right?
He's going to be a bit of a special case too, though, right? Like let's say you've got 3 kids, and your first kid comes down with the chickenpox, picked it up at school. Then your second kid gets it, is going to get it way worse than the first one, because the first one got the infection by just a small amount of exposure to somebody that had it at school. But your second kid is living with the first one that had it, and so got this massive exposure before their body started to try to fight it. They were already massively exposed instead of just a little exposed. This doctor dude was massively exposed before they realized that there was something being exposed to. So him dying despite being young and not old and infirm, that's not an indication. I wouldn't treat that as a definite indication of anything concerning. Just remember that he was heavily exposed.
Well, that's probably true, and he was exposed before they knew what they were dealing with. But I suppose now we know what we're dealing with. I mean, I was worried about that they had the Kirkland firefighters go and taking the people out of life care, and then suddenly they all came down with something. I was going, man, if they came down with something, that means that none of the protections work, because they had like full gowns and N95 masks and goggles.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it turned out that they don't have the coronavirus. So
Mousser, I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce his name or her name, but they have a very good point about SARS was very quick, and so that helped to contain it. Every virus is a little different, and the dynamics of it are very different based on how long it takes to infect, what the means of infection is, how much exposure there has to be, and how long it takes for it to make you visibly sick, and when you're contagious. Those things are like different per virus, and it makes their ability to spread a lot different. Like, so for each virus, there are parameters about how much it will spread, how quickly it'll spread, how many people it'll infect. It's very different from case to case. So we only can use the other examples, like the way I used SARS is limited in the value of the comparison to other diseases, but not without some value. But you have to kind of just keep in mind that, yeah, each virus is going to be different.
I think what's scaring people is that here in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, we're getting cases that just seemingly pop out of nowhere. Like a person on Facebook gets diagnosed, and a random person at Amazon gets diagnosed, and like a random person working at the sports stadium gets it. And none of these people knew where they got it from, right? None of these people traveled out of state, because you think that you're safe because, okay, I didn't go to China, or Iran or any of these other places, and I haven't run into anybody who's done that. But and it would be a lot more comforting if we knew that, each of these people could point at, who they got it from, right? I had a visitor from whatnot.
Well,
but they're saying that the virus has probably actually been circulating in Washington State for the past 6 weeks, unbeknownst to us.
Yeah.
It just took that long for it to appear. But that's what they call community transmission, that you're getting it from people who just live in the community. It's not coming directly. You didn't get it from like the hot spot. And now we're the hot spot. So, and we don't know enough to know whether we have it or not. That's why it's kind of the problem why you have to ration testing. If you can only do 200 tests a day, then you can't test everybody, right? Of course, you have to ration the tests. But that means that for this particular coronavirus, where you could go walking around seem perfectly fine, you could be spreading it around. And I saw there was like this study done 2018 or so, looking into the possibility of you just breathing, just breathing and talking normally. Is that enough to spread the virus? And they did say, yeah, like, you just normal breathing, you are respirating out, detectable levels of virus. So, you could just be sitting next to someone in a car. They might not even be coughing. And you could possibly, breathe in the virus particles and get this. Because, there have been transmission cases of just someone driving someone to the airport was enough to get them infected, right? So that's kind of scary. And so that's why you don't know whether, the person next to you has got SARS and is going to give it to you. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it's so scary, right? You don't know who the enemy is anywhere, right? So the only thing you can do is, as suggested, self-quarantine, try and stay in your own little protective bubble. Stay 6 feet away from other people, right? Because apparently these viruses are so heavy that they will drop to the floor within 6 feet. And then don't touch the floor, right? But,
by the way, I don't know whether anyone has mentioned it, but you see the bottle here, a used 2-liter Coke bottle with water that I was drinking from, and it reminded me that if you pop some sterling silver in here, like you've got some old bracelet, or you have a silver dime, or something in sterling silver. Drop it in there. Put a few drops of some weak acid like vinegar, or even a little bit of a vitamin C tablet that will ionize some of the silver. I'm not saying that is effective against this particular coronavirus, but there is the possibility that taking a little silver is going to help you fight off different pathogens, including viruses.
Yes, we have silver and copper have antiviral properties. Yes, this is true. So maybe we should be drinking out of copper cups or something.
Well, you can buy a silver generator. They have them on the market.
A silver generator?
Yeah, it has two 99.99% pure silver rods of a diameter about a 1/16 of an inch, or maybe a little larger, and a battery, basically. And if you put this in distilled water, it'll create ionized silver.
Yeah, what I was saying, Dennis, was the poor man's way to do it, where you can just put a silver coin. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not too effective, though. Yeah.
And a little bit of a weak acid will also ionize silver, where you don't have to fumble around with wires and batteries and things like that. And it's chemically the same thing. And so you're getting a very low dose of silver sort of constantly, and that's why I'm totally healthy person. Ha ha, joke. But at any rate,
yeah, James, when's the last time you had a cold?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Years. I mean, years and years and years.
It's like usually I catch
and being a smoker, you would think I would be more susceptible, and I have to quit that. That's killing me, obviously. But aside from, I mean, I don't remember the last time I've had a cold.
Yeah, usually I get like a cold like maybe once a year. But it's really annoying because they say the cold only lasts for like 3 or 4 days. I said, that's BS, because it's like I'll have a cold and it would just seem to last for like a month, right? Or the cough would last for a long time. That's what I'm worried about, because I still have a tiny little cough. It's like it's not a good time to have a cough, right? Then not a good time to be sick, right?
It's probably the flu, not a cold, if it lasts that long.
Well, I don't know what it is, but it just just the just like the annoying cough just keeps on going on. I discussed this with my doctor, and he said it's kind of like a form of asthma or something. So next time it happens, I should go in there, and he could probably give me some asthma medication to alleviate the cough, I suppose.
When there's an outbreak of a disease and it becomes news all over the world, wherever a organization wants some cash, then it's in their best interests to promote awareness of this outbreak. When SARS outbreak occurred, I worked at the health unit who set up a or maybe it was H1N1. Sorry, when H1N1, I worked at the health unit a few times. And when H1N1 occurred, they applied to the government for money to buy 110 laptops to run the vaccination clinics because they used it as an opportunity to get the cash. And then after they finished with the vaccinations, those laptops all went into mothballs, and then they used them for the next flu season's vaccination. So for 10 months out of the year, they sit dormant. But the health unit used H1N1 as the means to get the cash to automate their flu vaccination seasons. So they used it. It was an opportunity. So when you hear like the World Health Organization and all the CDC, and you talked about them asking for 10 point something billion dollars, when there's no vaccine yet, then like you said, what's that $10 billion for? It'll be all the different health organizations in the different states are all asking for money that they don't even know that they need yet because there's opportunity.
Yeah.
So
now one rumor that I heard about on the internet was that the World Health Organization, WHO, has still not declared this a pandemic, and the reason for that is that there's like these emergency bonds. There's like some huge amount of money, like $500 million in emergency bonds, which if they declare a pandemic, become available to use for the pandemic, and then the bonds basically go worthless to the people who are investing in these things. So they're like holding off and declaring this thing a pandemic because if they do, they'll lose like $500 million or something like that, right? And so they have this like investment in not declaring this thing a pandemic, right?
Yeah, there's no ethics anymore.
And it's like, yeah, if they've got an emergency fund for a pandemic, yeah, they need to be using that right now, right? No doubt in my mind, they need to be using that right now.
I don't tend to entirely trust the WHO just because of its affiliation with the UN. I've got no good reason to not trust everything they say, and they do seem pretty up and up. But they're part of the UN, and the whole UN, they like to say stuff that ain't true because they manipulate thoughts and stuff. So, I try to get my information about diseases from like the Canadian health authorities or the US health authorities as opposed to from the WHO. That's just my personal preference because I don't entirely trust them.
You don't trust the WHO, huh?
Not entirely. Like, I don't trust them to not exaggerate, inflate, make things more than they are because they have an agenda, and they don't hide that they have an agenda. It's documented. It's public knowledge.
So unlike most governmental agencies like the Chinese government, which upon hearing that they have a problem, try to suppress it, right? I think that's what most governments try and do. They probably try and reduce panic and saying there's nothing to worry about.
Depending on the situation, they don't want like look when China got it all around the world. Nobody wanted to buy Chinese stuff because they're afraid. What if it's in the air in the bubble wrap, or what if it's whatever, and so there's a depression. It causes economic depression.
Well, we've certainly seen that around here. It's like when it first came out, like nobody would go to a Chinese restaurant, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Even though there's really not any riskier than going to a McDonald's, probably. But
yeah, the food at their local Chinese food restaurant isn't coming from China, or if it is, it was made 6 months ago and it's been in a packaged wrapper and hasn't been exposed to anything.
Well, they are saying the mainstream does say it's perfectly safe to accept goods made from China because these viruses can't last that long on exposed to the air. It's
Right.
they did say though the virus can survive on your iPhone for like 7 days, right?
Yeah.
So if your stuff is getting shipped faster than 7 days, you still might have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, maybe.
And now with Amazon next day delivery, really have to worry about it, right? It's like, yeah, they could be shipping live viruses now.
Yeah.
Because you get that stuff in next day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So better stop buying stuff from China. No, see, that's silliness.
So Franklin, can you hear me?
Yeah, Harry, go ahead.
What's going on in what you're in Washington, right?
Right in the hot zone. There's zombies right outside the door.
I mean, give us some facts about what's going on in the state of Washington. Have they declared some kind of emergency or what action? What's going on? Tell us what's going on.
Well, it most certainly seems to be. It's like Keene County has recommended that everyone who can work at home do work at home, right? And we've had infections.
Keene County. I have no idea who Keene County is.
That's where everywhere Seattle is, the county that Seattle is in. So
how many cases? How many cases reported cases in Seattle?
It's like there's like 81 cases and like 12 deaths, and there's like 1 or 2 deaths more per day. Most of them stemming from the rehab center that my mom uses. Right. Good thing she's not in there now. Where she'd be trapped. But I mean, Seattle is probably
elderly. All right. So hold on. Is this mostly? They're not really telling us. I'm guessing it's mostly elderly people who are dying. Is that right?
Yes. Correct.
Yes, that's correct. So it's
the same thing as if you get the flu, and the main risk group is elderly people.
Yes, that would seem to be true. Although there are some people like that Chinese doctor who are perfectly young. It's like a 50-year-old died, a day or two ago.
It's an individual case out of thousands. It's not statistically relevant. You can't use an individual case as evidence of anything. There was a kid that died of SARS, and he was a hockey player, and he died like during a hockey. This was a kid in Ontario here, and it was like a big deal because SARS had killed somebody that was young. And then they found out when they did the autopsy that he had a heart condition that they didn't know about. And that was why he had been susceptible to it. And that was why he died.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how many of these people would have just died anyways. Just being in life care.
So the question is
a case as indicative of anything because you don't know what else was going on in that person's body you just don't know enough about an individual case. You have to use the statistics, not individual cases, right? That's all I'm saying.
But I might humbly submit that the statistics are flawed. For one thing, look for next week because the current federal administration's task force headed up by the vice president, I won't mention any names here, is saying that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of test kits distributed to state health authorities and available to labs, that do clinical tests for patients, blood tests and so forth. And so I think the statistics regarding number of confirmed cases is going to go way up in the U.S. As these hundreds of thousands, up to a million of these test kits are distributed. And they said that distribution would be hitting the fan on Monday of next week, I guess it would be. And so the Harry Ricker was asking for statistics. Well, wait till the end of next week on that, and I think you're going to get more reasonable statistics. Plus, as far as the fatality rate goes, the China data is complete BS. I mean, they've had crematoriums running 100 bodies approximately a day, and there's 25 crematoriums reportedly in Wuhan alone, running 24 hours a day. And so that's 25 times, that's 2,500 bodies being cremated. And by the way, they had to bring in mobile crematoriums in addition to that. So, in other words, with our numerator in terms of fatalities and denominator in terms of confirmed cases, this data doesn't really exist yet. In China, it's been completely covered up. And if I may conclude my remarks at this time with, I hadn't even thought of what Franklin's background and family ties might be. And I'm sure all of us, now that we learned today, I mean, I just thought of Franklin as our wonderful moderator, but now I see that he has perhaps family in China and so forth. And so our
I'm
hearts
at risk.
go out to Franklin that he can be safe and that his family in China and relatives and so forth are safe. Our hearts go out to you, Franklin.
You're right. I never noticed before. Franklin, you're Asian.
That's right. And apparently the flu is especially good at killing people of Wuhan descent, which I would be. So
you're from Wuhan?
My parents, my father is from Hubei. So
wow. Is this
so yeah, the family's a little bit worried about that, but okay.
Are we safe?
So back to my original question, how many people in the state of Washington have died?
Like 12, like most of them from that nursing home. But I guess maybe your question is, what's the entire United States going to be like when it gets as hot as it is here in Kirkland, Washington? And yeah, you'll see everyone
hot
in
terms of
the viral infection, because here in the Pacific Northwest, people are getting randomly infected, right? You don't have to be doing anything special or risky to get this. People are just randomly getting it, right? It's just, we feel like it's just randomly already circulating around. So the only way to stop it is to stop meeting people. Although they're still going to have the gigantic soccer match
this is not
tomorrow.
unusual. I mean, this might be a safe thing to do, cancel church, public meetings and other things that are not really all that important or crucial to,
Yeah, that's what's happening
this
here.
has been done before.
If you're wondering what the rest of the United States is going to be like, it's going to be like that.
Behavior. If you go to church, forget the part about, okay, everybody, let's have fellowship and everybody shake the hands of all their neighbors. You don't do that part. You can still go to church, just don't be stupid.
Now I saw the latest thing here was, elbow bumps, right? If you greet someone, you can give them the elbow bump.
Yeah.
I have not seen that. The last time.
So Franklin, are people wearing masks?
I haven't gone out to check. I've been in the house myself for an entire week.
Smart.
And haven't poked my head out because I'm required to work from home, so I don't need to know. But today I'm going to go out. I'm going to go shopping and see what's going out there. I plan to wear a mask. So yeah, and I'm sure I will see other people doing so.
Wouldn't it be safer to go shopping late at night during the week when it's not the busiest time of the week?
It might be. Now you're giving me ideas, right?
I mean, but
when I get there, I'll probably find out there's nothing to buy, right?
That's possible.
Like the weirdest stuff was missing. Like I tried to buy a cabbage last week, and there was no cabbages to be found, right? And there was no whole milk to be found. It's like, why is it that the 2% milk is all full, but all the whole milk is gone, right? There's just like weird stuff missing.
I heard the Costco in my city has ran out of toilet paper, but I was just over at Zayre's and their shelves is totally full of toilet paper. So I don't know what Costco's issue is.
Well, I guess one truckload will replenish them, but maybe by now it's already gone. like I said, I'm not quite sure if people are stocking up on toilet paper.
And hand sanitizer is apparently getting scarce in places.
Oh yeah, you can buy one bottle of hand sanitizer. It's like liquid gold. It's like $50 a bottle on Amazon now, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm
some
sure
stores.
in 6 months, we're going to be talking about it and how silly it all was and how overblown it all was. And yes, lots of people died. I'm not saying it's a nothing. I'm just saying it doesn't need to be as as feared as it currently is.
Well, I think we have the advantage that we know what's coming.
Yes.
What we don't want is like New York City turning into Wuhan, right? Because when you watch the documentary, when that first started happening, the entire health system was just overwhelmed. You'd see this hospital corridor just packed with people, and they're bringing these people in, and they're just people just like sitting in lawn chairs in the hallway, and they're asking, where do we put these people? There's no place to put them, and they have these healthcare workers. They're just breaking down and crying. I can't stand it anymore. There's too much. We can't. It's terrible when that happens, and certainly this virus has the potential to do that. Right? It has the potential to completely overwhelm the local healthcare system.
And people were being locked in their apartments, in these tall apartment buildings that they have in cities like Wuhan and elsewhere, or limited in access to leave their own apartment buildings. But some are actually being locked in whole families in their individual apartments, that the authorities would come and bolt up the doors. I've seen videos to that effect. So the actual fatalities is maybe 10 or even 100x more than what China's been reporting. And I think this is true in almost every country that is now reporting data. And as I say, when these kits get out in the U.S. and in this coming week, supposedly hundreds of thousands of test kits will be coming out. We're going to see a lot more statistics on that.
Somebody there, he's got some statistics on the mortality rate by age here. So, it looks, relatively low. So you got 50 to 59, you got 1.3. 60 to 69, you're practically dead. 3.6. So. And if you live in life care, it's like 25%, right? Okay. But don't quote me on that. I'm just making stuff up. I'm just pulling statistics out of my butt. Let's see here.
Another scary thing is I was talking to some friends here in Dominica, and if somebody dies and it's confirmed that it's from the coronavirus in your neighborhood, in your building, or in your little village or whatever, you're likely to become basically a quarantine prisoner, because the authorities will block off the whole area to prevent spread. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but that's what happens. And so the scary thing is not only keeping oneself well, but also, like if a neighbor drops dead and it's from this virus, it's likely your whole neighborhood that you're going to suddenly become a prisoner, in effect, much like these people on the ships and on the cruise ships and so forth.
Well, that's been happening with the schools around here. So, like, one kid was diagnosed in a high school, and the entire school shut down for at least a day to be thoroughly cleaned. So a lot of schools are doing that. Anyone who's had any kind of case, they've shut down the building. Like, that's what they did for Amazon and Facebook. Just like they had one case each, and so they've completely shut down. Amazon has completely shut down their Seattle campus. That's a big deal, right? And asked all of their employees to work at home. So that's what it's like here in the hot zone. It's like, yeah, if you're not affected, and if you can prepare to work from home, that would probably be a good thing to prepare for, right? You should probably if you're not in one of the affected areas, and if you are at a job, like a high-tech job where you can do that. I mean, that's what I did, because I did that knowing. So I came in on Monday and I made sure to get and bring home my laptop that I work on. Normally I leave my laptop out at work and I VPN to it. But with this whole thing going on and not knowing, when I'm going to be back in the office, I made sure to bring my computer with me so that I have the best possible connection and that I'm not reliant on anything going on in the office, but I can still work from home pretty efficiently. So, and I've set up my big monitors so I can work efficiently, just like I do at work. So I'm okay there, but I'm just saying for anyone else who hasn't been as badly affected as we are here in the Pacific Northwest, that would probably be a good thing to prepare for. Be prepared to work from home if you can. So do what you can to prepare for that, because that's certainly something that is definitely happening here in Seattle. Okay, let's see here. What do we got here? So we're getting towards the end of our time here. So this week we've been talking about COVID-19, the coronavirus. And I forgot to mention, so there's a movie called Contagion with Gwyneth Paltrow and Matt Damon. And it's funny because they had a picture of Gwyneth Paltrow traveling in a plane wearing one of these super fancy masks. Apparently there's a super fancy mask that you can buy for some ungodly amount of money. They're saying that the rich are reacting to the flu virus differently, right? They're chartering their own private jets and things like that. But in any case, her funny comment was that I've already been in this movie, right? Because she dies in that movie of this contagion, which she acts as patient zero to bring it to Minneapolis and causes massive outbreak. And the funny thing is that if you're watching this movie, it's like you can't tell the difference between watching the movie and watching the evening news, basically, because you see them reporting the virus, and it's just like that. They show the same graphics and the same red things, the same kind of statistics of numbers infected, numbers dead. So if you're looking for some cheap entertainment, yeah, you can go rent the movie Contagion. It's reality now here. So except in Contagion, the virus was very much more deadly. It would kill you in like 3 days and spread, but just by looking at somebody, it would spread. So that's but it was remarkable that like all the steps that were being mentioned are kind of the things that are going on right now. And they're spreading rumors about what can cure the thing. And people are walking around in bubble suits and the streets are all empty. That's kind of been happening here in Seattle. They had the national news here showing Pike's Place Market, which is normally very crowded. And now not so much. So definitely people here in Seattle are scared. We're all kind of hunkering down, and we're just going to take it like a week at a time. It's like right now, everybody is kind of saying, okay, we're going to do this whole self-isolation thing for 2 weeks. It's like the entire King County has been, given a 2-week quarantine. So University of Washington says they're not going to resume their classes until maybe 3 weeks from now, after the term starts. And they're going to do all this online learning. And if that's not practical, they're saying, well, they're just going to grade the students based on whatever they had done up to that time. And we have an entire school district who has adopted that same approach for at least the next 2 weeks. I'll be here, self-quarantined here in the Seattle area. But like I said, I'm going to go out. I'm going to wear a mask. And when I get back home, I'm going to make sure to wash my hands for 20 seconds. Maybe change my clothes. Maybe burn my clothes. I don't know. But, try not to be too crazy, as Alistair is trying to tell us, it's like, it's not that bad yet, but yet it can get as bad as it did in Wuhan, right? Where somehow they managed to build the entire hospital in 2 weeks. To me, that seems just a little suspicious, right? How can they build an entire hospital in 2 weeks? Not unless they had planned for it, right? Unless they knew this might happen, right? So they just happen to have a hospital already pre-made somewhere, right? Or maybe not. So we've been discussing conspiracy theories here and rumors and practical advice for how to hoard toilet paper at Costco, right? So don't let that happen to you. But I think that will do it for this episode of the everything you want to know about the coronavirus 101 science chat here today. And maybe next week we'll be talking more about it, or maybe we'll get back to talking about gravity and stuff like that. But for now, that will be our science chat for this week.
Cheers, guys.
Everyone panic, we're gonna die. No, okay, kids. Well, maybe not.
See you next week, Franklin. Stay safe.
Yeah, not unless I die of the coronavirus, in which case, well.
I think it would take longer than a week to kill you. So surely, if you do get it, you could still do next week.
Yeah, I'll be going like that. Yeah, okay. And I'll be testing vitamin D and vitamin C and microwaves. Okay. Stick my head in a microwave. Maybe that'll help. No? Okay. Well, thanks for everyone for participating, and everyone stay healthy.
Cheers. Bye, guys.